What is up, everybody? Welcome to Sales Stories in Real Life, episode 9. Today, we've got Junior Lartey in the house. Junior is an AE at a startup called Pickle.ai. He runs his own podcast called How I Deal. Make sure you connect with him on LinkedIn. Junior, welcome to the show. I hear you had a really good sales experience, but there was no salesperson involved. What happened there?
Yes, Alex, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about this. It's probably different than, most people that come on. There's this company, okay? It's called Blue Star Nutraceuticals. Basically, it's like a supplement company, right? Let me give you the full scope of what happened. Okay. I've got 2 kids at home, and I had just come home from a lengthy vacation. I was freaking exhausted. I come home. My wife was like, "Hey, I'm going to take the kids to the splash pad." This was over the summer. I'll take the kids to the splash pad. We'll come back in 3 hours. You take a nap, and then when we come back, we'll go get dinner. So I'm laying in bed, scrolling through Instagram before I take my nap, and I'm just like scrolling through my feed. Right, I see all sorts of ads, bunch of stuff, posts that I wanted to catch up on, and then I stopped on this one video, and it was from Blue Star Nutraceuticals, and they're talking about basically it was like, hey, just so you know, the typical gym bro that you see, that's not real. They're using supplements. So at that point I was like, that's actually interesting. Almost everything I've seen about, like the bulked up, the I don't know, use this supplement, do that, is more about just like, do you want to be a man, basically? Whereas this was like, just so you know, that's all fake. They're like supplementing hardcore. So I started watching right on Instagram. They've got like those 30-second video ads. So I'm just watching that, and I'm hooked actually. Right, that like the opener really hooked me. 45 minutes later, I like paused the video and I was like, how long is this video? And it was an hour and 15. I was 45 minutes into it without like really realizing I had invested all this time. So at that point, I was like, fetch, there's 30 minutes left. It's like, I'll just watch the rest of it. Like, I've come this far. So I watched the rest of it, all of which was like very informational, super level headed type of information. And it missed all the messaging of like the typical bro culture, the typical like hit the weights, bulk up with this protein powder kind of thing. So after the video, then there's a link to the website. And specifically from the video, it's like, if you take our quick little quiz, we'll tell you kind of what supplements you can look at or dabble with. So I did that, go to the website. Anyways, I selected a bunch of products just based on the video, based on this quiz. I put it in my cart. It was $115. And I sent the screenshot to my wife, and I was like waiting. And I was like, I'm just going to buy it. So I bought it. And then my wife responded, and she's like, are you going to buy that? And I responded with, I already did. This is not typical. I would not typically just like watch, an Instagram ad and then buy a product from there. So it was like, it was such a different experience. And like you mentioned, nobody sold me on this. I wasn't talking to a representative. The messaging just like really struck me.
I'm really excited to dig into this one. Let's go all the way back to the beginning, because number one, you don't typically buy off of Instagram ads, and you were trying to take a nap. So not only have you been probably bombarded with similar messaging before, you were trying to drift off into a nap, and they just nailed you with that hook. And for those who don't get advertised by these companies, Junior is spot on. It's typically very macho, go hit the weights, again, very bro culture. So what was
Yep.
that experience like for you, right, in those first few seconds when you're totally just hit with this pattern interrupt? Like, was it intrigue, curiosity, or take us through that?
Yeah. At first, well, my first initial thought, right, is I know that it's some type of supplement company. So I'm already on like the defense, right? I'm already like, oh my gosh, another one of these ads, basically. But the first line, like the first thing he said is like, everything you see in the gym is is not real. right? Like these muscles aren't real. The way that some of these guys look, especially in advertisements, aren't real. And he's like, basically, it was like, that's like the same for us. But we help people understand how to get there if they want, or if you just want to live healthier, lose a little bit of weight, right, and get into more fitness, we can help you do that too. So it was like, it wasn't the all in on you have to be a bro to do this. It was like, hey, bros are doing this, but also if you want to get a little bit more fit, if you want to lose a little bit more weight, if you want to feel more healthy, like you can supplement to get there as well. And typically, like that is a message I have yet to hear, that like you can do both ends of the spectrum, right? Like nobody is saying that. But this company did. That was like the first thing they said, and that's where I really got hooked and started watching more of this very lengthy video.
Man, that's a great advertisement. I mean, shout out to whoever made that video. I mean, there was no, it sounds like, mention of we're the number one supplement company, right? We're the number one growing supplement company for the first week of September, right? Like no fabricated BS. It was just, hey, we're going to grab your attention immediately. And that's really hard to do these days. You also said something after that. You said that you were 45 minutes into the video, and then the last half hour, however long it was very informative. Like, were they teaching you things that you didn't know before? Were they sort of reinforcing some things that you knew, or were they like adding background color to, things that you kind of had an idea but weren't quite sure yet? I guess, what did you, obviously don't have to go super into detail, but what was
Yeah,
that education piece
yeah.
like?
Basically, it was like, here's the theory behind what we're doing, and that is really what got me. It was like, the aspects of fitness is thought about in so many like different ways, but the typical fitness for a male, especially my age, right, like age 30, is that like you should be at your absolute prime, you should be an animal, a beast in the gym. Whereas they are like, that's not the reality. Like fitness can look, it can look so different. There's a huge spectrum. And I don't have like a weightlifting background, right? Like I played soccer, so I'm like more of like the running type fitness, right? And I had never considered supplements or anything like that to help me out in that arena, right? Like you hear like keto, right? Like keto is like a really big thing these days. Low carb diets, all this stuff. They didn't talk about any of that, and it was just a unique story that I hadn't really heard, and more so they were like debunking some of the things that I had heard or had previously believed.
They had a point of view, right? They had a very direct and unique point of view, and they leaned into that. So that's a perfect place to segue into all of our B2B sellers that are watching today. What can they sort of take away from this? Because connects on the phone are down, right? Spam
Yeah,
filters are getting more and more and more complex and advanced. So this is very on par with where sales is going today. So what would you say to all those B2B sellers that are watching? What can they take away and learn from this, Junior?
yeah. I think the way that I was hooked and where I was hooked is pretty relevant. For me, right, I'm scrolling through Instagram, and that's where the message came. So it's like finding where your buyers live, right? That could be LinkedIn, that could be like in some Slack group, it could be maybe it really is email, right? Like they live in their inboxes. That's a great place to be if you can get there. And then the other thing was the message. I am a huge believer that sales reps should know how to write copy, right? A lot of times, like we lean on the marketing team to like, hey, can you help us write a cadence? Can you help us uh, put some messaging together? And it's a huge miss because we need to learn that ourselves, because it's not like one email is where knowing how to write copy ends, right? Like I get into a deal, I still need to know how to like orchestrate the message from the conversation. And that's not something I can outsource to my marketing team, right? So that's a really big one. that like blended experience of I was on Instagram, that's where the ad hit me, right? You're trying to cultivate that blended experience, and there can be a lot of value in that. The last piece I would think about is like they made it really easy for me to buy, right? I didn't have to talk to anybody. I'm not saying that's always a good thing, but in this case, I didn't have to talk to anybody. I had all the information that I was looking for. It was at the forefront. And I also felt like I was getting educated on specific pieces that, my previous train of thought was not quite frankly aligned with. So those are some of those things, right? Hit them where they are, write better copy, make it easy to buy, and make sure you're providing like a different, unique perspective.
Those are really, really, really relevant and amazing takeaways. I'd reinforce, but I think you hit the nail on the head with what you just said, man. I think this is a perfect time to wrap. Let's not dilute the message. That last takeaway was really juicy. Why don't you take a second and plug something with the audience? I know you're working on a bunch, Junior.
Yes. Okay. So podcast, right? I'm running a podcast called How I Deal. It's where we sit down with an account executive and we walk through a deal from end to end, right? How they became aware about the company, what they did to prospect them, what the discovery stages was like, what they learned in discovery, the demo experience, any major barriers, how they overcame them. And then, of course, right, tying it off with a nice, pretty bow and winning the deal. So if you're an account executive and you've got an awesome story to tell, a crazy, a crazy deal that you manage, anything, I'd love to hear about it. Would love to, get people on the podcast. But we've got 22 episodes. Well, I guess at this point we have 30 episodes. So go give it a listen. If you're interested, reach out. Would love to start a conversation and see if we can get you on the podcast.
There you have it, folks. Don't forget to connect with Junior on LinkedIn. Go check out How I Deal. If you're an AE who has a relevant story, definitely hit Junior up. That sounds like a really, really, really great place to tell valuable stories as well. Junior, this has been great. It is a wrap. We will see you all next week. And remember, work on your copy.